Hi, my name is Sarah Mancini. I'm with the Office of Neighborhood Coordination, and I'm here with Adam Hathaway, a professional registered parliamentarian, and he's going to chat with us about membership rights and what rights you have as a member. And I know it's something that he's always reminded me that members have more rights than they think they do, and so we're going to dive into that discussion today. So Adam, I guess let's start with that question. What rights does a voting member have in an association, generally speaking?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of people who feel that when they go to meetings or they participate in organizations that they kind of have to do what they're told. And that's simply not the case. Members, like you said, have more rights than they think they do. Very basic, if they have the right to attend meetings, no one can tell them that they can't go to their organization's meetings if they're a member. And if they're a voting member, then no one can take away their ability to vote without due process or unless there's something in the bylaws. One common example is if your dues are due by January 1st, but that was 3 years ago and you still haven't paid your dues, you don't automatically lose your right to vote unless it's mentioned in the bylaws that that's what happens as a consequence. So no one can take away your vote unless it's stated in the bylaws as a consequence, or if there's some kind of disciplinary action. If there's committees of the organization that you belong to, if you're on a committee, you have the right to attend that committee. No one can keep you out. There are some committees that sometimes they might find themselves going into executive session, which means they meet privately. If you're a member of that committee, then you have the right to attend all of those meetings, even in executive session.
What would it mean to be a member of a committee or a member of an organization? How do you define being a member?
In order to define anything in an organization, I always recommend the first thing to do is go to the bylaws. Yes,
go to their bylaws.
Go to the bylaws. And there should be a section of the bylaws that discusses membership. And some organizations have different classes of membership. So there may even be a non-voting class, like honorary. And so in those cases, take a look and find out what does it take to become a member and satisfy those requirements. And if you are officially a member, you can't be just thrown out without process, and you can't have your basic rights taken away either without some kind of process.
And that process should be outlined in the bylaws.
Absolutely.
Got it. So we've talked about member rights. On the flip side of that, what responsibilities would a member have?
So in the same way that the members have the rights to attend meetings, they have the responsibility to go to meetings. If you're a member, then participate, be active. If you wanted to not participate, you could have not joined. So since you've gone to the effort of joining, participate. I believe that members have the responsibility to participate, to be educated. If there are agendas and reports and topics that are distributed in advance, when you go to the meeting, be well educated. Educate yourself on what you want your position to be, so that when motions occur and different actions are taken, you can speak well for your own interests and the interests of the organization.
That makes sense. So a member is at a meeting, and once they're at that meeting, what rights do they have to address any concerns that they might have about how the meeting is going?
That's a really good question. So usually the very first thing that's voted on at most meetings is the approval of the agenda. So any member, unless the bylaws say otherwise, has the right to move to put something on the agenda. Now, some organizations are required to follow the Open Meetings Act, and that puts restrictions on what you can do at the meeting, and some bylaws restrict what can be on the agenda. But most of the organizations out there, they don't have those restrictions. So they should be aware if there are any, and if not, they can move to add any item that they want to the agenda. It does take a vote, and at the beginning of the meeting, it does take a majority vote to amend the agenda, but any member can make that motion to add some special topic of importance to the agenda if they want to. And after the meeting started, at any point where they are officially recognized by the chair, they can move to amend the agenda again. Now, after the agenda is originally adopted, then that does take a 2/3 vote. When you change your mind, which you can do, it does take a 2/3 vote. During a meeting, there's also some other things they can do. Let's say that the member perceives that there's a procedural breach, that maybe the chair has accidentally misstated something, that a vote is 2/3 when it's really majority, or misquoted a bylaw, or some honest mistake. Any member can stand up and do what I call a blurt stop. So usually you have to be recognized by the chair, but sometimes you can do a blurt or a blurt stop. And in this case, it would be, you would stand up and you would blurt, "Point of order." and then you would stop, because the chair still has to direct traffic. So, and there may be more than one of you rising to a point of order, and the chair has to decide which one's going to go first. So any member, upon seeing a procedural breach, can say, point of order, and wait. And the chair says, state your point. Oh, Madam Chair, I believe that this vote's really 2/3 and not majority. Or I believe that this is a violation of the bylaw because. So any member can bring up a perceived breach. Any member can ask a question. There's something called a request for information. If you're not sure about some details regarding a motion, when someone's not speaking, you can stand up and you say, I rise for a request for information. And it's not a debate point. It's just very specifics. How much is this going to cost? Where is it going to happen? That kind of thing. And because so many people are a little intimidated and maybe a little frightened of procedure, they have the option to ask questions. There's something called a point of parliamentary inquiry. And that means whenever somebody's not speaking, you can rise and say point of parliamentary inquiry, and the chair will say, what is your question? And so any questions that you have about the process, you can get answered in the middle of the meeting. And any member has a right to get their questions asked. And then, of course, one I definitely want to mention is if the chair announces a vote, all those in favor say aye, all those opposed say no, and the chair, to the best of the chair's ability, says, oh, the ayes have it, motion carries. If any member at all disagrees or has any question about whether or not that was the proper way to call that vote, any member can blurt division. And when a member blurts division, the chair must stop and re-examine the vote. So see, members have a lot more rights than they do. If they don't think things are going the way they think they should, they can throw a flag on the play. They can ask questions, they can ask things. Even though a lot of people don't have a whole bunch of parliamentary things memorized, all of us, I think, can kind of have that gut check. If they think one person is cracking the whip over a meeting, or if maybe everybody's rights aren't being respected equally, we kind of can tell. And that might be a really good time to stop, ask some questions, maybe study a little more parliamentary procedure.
Yeah, so even if you don't know the proper word or language to use, you still have those rights to stand up and ask a question or try to clarify what happened or where the meeting is going.
Absolutely.
It also sounds like it's pretty important for members to know their own bylaws, so they know the process that should be followed so that they can jump in if something looks amiss.
Absolutely. When we discussed about member responsibilities earlier, I thought that a responsibility of every member is to read the bylaws. So when somebody becomes a member of the organization for the very first time, one of the first things they should do is request a copy of the bylaws, which also flips, it's a member right. Every member has access to the bylaws. So in no case should bylaws ever not be given to a member. That's a specific member right. Every member has the right and responsibility to know what's the culture of the organization, what are the rules of the organization, and what powers have been delegated to what officers or what bodies.
That makes sense. Is there anything else you'd like to add on this topic that our neighborhoods might need to know about?
Yeah, actually, you know what? There is. I don't think it can be stated enough. Don't be afraid to get in, get busy. Don't be afraid to exercise your rights, to find out what they are, and then to enact on them. As long as everybody is polite and following the protocol, which is just don't get angry at meetings. It's just not worth it. So everybody should be really empowered to express themselves at meetings within the rules, within the constraints, and to make sure that we all have equal access to the process and equal access to democracy.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for joining us, and we'll chat with you later, I'm sure.
Thanks. It's been a real pleasure.